are really these underlying orientations that kind of point in some sort of broad way about their life. Finally, one other problem with this approach is that it doesn't really tell us, or unless a sociologist is careful, we oftentimes can't tell what sort of expectation we have about how a belief will affect action. So oftentimes these sociologists who do this work, and I'll include myself in this group, oftentimes are more exploring connections within a data set versus usually always predicting what those connections are going to be. A classic example of not being sure how beliefs connect to action was an experiment done by Darley and Batson in 1973. Darley and Batson, you can look this up on Wikipedia, where they actually were interviewing seminary students, and they had some of the seminary students, or they were telling all the seminary students that they had to give a lecture or give a sermon on the Good Samaritan. And then the psychologist would look at their watch and say, "Oh my gosh, you got to run now because you're late for that lecture." And the seminarian would run out of the meeting, and unbeknownst to the seminarian, the psychologist had staged what looks kind of like a homeless, possibly drunk, possibly abused, possibly dying person laying right in the path that the person had to go by on their way to deliver this sermon. This is all a big experiment. So half the group, the psychologist said, "Oh my gosh, you got to go right now, you're late." And the other half, the group said, "Oh, you got 10 minutes to get over to the hall before you give your lecture or your sermon on the Good Samaritan." And the psychologists were saying, well, if these people are religious believers and they believe in the story of the Good Samaritan of helping others, then shouldn't that lead directly towards helping somebody, i.e. helping the person that they staged to look like they were hurting? What the psychologists found is the biggest predictor of helping or not was whether people were in a hurry. So whether they thought they had to get somewhere right away to give the sermon, or whether they thought they had 10 minutes. Now, some people interpret that as a survey saying, well, then religious belief doesn't matter at all, but I interpret it as saying, well, there's context to which beliefs matter and how beliefs matter. So overall, this approach to beliefs is the most dominant approach in sociology, but it does have some problems because it's not clear exactly how beliefs work to affect behavior. Now, the last school that we get to here is what I call the beliefs as kind of major breakthroughs that orient action. And when I say major breakthroughs, I mean characteristics of groups, specifically of religious groups, certain ways of seeing the meaning of the world and the meaning of human life that drastically affect the way that this group orients its behavior. So let me clear the whiteboard. Oh, crud. I think I forgot the eraser again. I'll blame it on my sickness, actually. An unused tissue will help. All right, so let's clear this off. And let me kind of take you through the Weber argument. So a couple of things to know about Weber before we get too deep. Weber talks about different types of rational action. Okay, just get on now that the rational action that most of us are familiar with, and that Weber says defines kind of the modern era of science and utilitarian behavior, is what he called instrumental rationality. So the example of this is that you do things according to certain steps because those certain steps have been well defined, and it's just what you do. So you basically kind of follow the recipe in the moment. You work hard because you work hard because it's the thing that leads to very